Hi everybody, this is Amy here to talk a little bit about the digestive system today. As you've been studying through the digestive system, you know that the food that gets placed in the mouth becomes broken down into a much thicker, smoother paste called chyme as it travels into the stomach. And then that chyme makes its way through the small intestine and through the large intestine until all of the remains are excreted from the body. Well, here in the small intestine and the large intestine, this is where we have mostly all of the nutrient absorption that's happening into the bloodstream. And the large intestine, we're dealing specific with water absorption. So if we think about the small intestine in particular and the need for nutrients to be absorbed, the small intestine has quite a few adaptations that are going to help us increase surface area. And the reason we need to increase surface area in the small intestine is so that we can increase the rate of absorption as much as possible. So we need to get all of the nutrients that are here. If we look at the small intestine as a cross section, right? Here's the wall of the small intestine, and this is where the chyme is located in the middle, right? But the blood vessels and the capillaries are all here in the wall itself. So these capillaries are here, and they're ready to pick up all of these nutrients. And that means that the nutrients have to move across the membrane of that small intestine lining so that they can get into the blood capillaries and into the bloodstream. Well, if we want to have as much of that nutrient transport happening as possible, we need to make sure that we have as much surface area as possible. So let's take a look at what this inner lining of the small intestine actually looks like. Now, it's not just a straight line. It's not a smooth surface. It actually has these very large structures called villi. This is a villus, singular. And that's just a large finger-like projection into the lumen of the small intestine. So this villus helps us increase surface area. If you're thinking about the alternative, it would just be having a straight line of cells that make up a smooth wall. But let's say that this version, this straight line version, has room for maybe 20 cells on it. Those cells are going to be actually where the transfer of nutrients is going to happen. So you could have about 20 cells worth of transport occurring. But if you put in place this big villus, maybe you get 80, 90, or maybe 100 of these cells where transfer can take place. So by having each of these villi project outwards and carry with it this epithelial lining, we're going to get a greater surface area. So that's the villus, but we also can look even closer and see that each individual cell has microvilli on the surface. And really I should draw it like this because it's just a part of the membrane itself. It's not something sitting on the top. So we take the same idea of the villus and we replicate it at the cellular level, and those are called microvilli. Again, increasing the surface area across which those nutrients can actually travel to make their way into the blood capillaries just on the other side. While we're here, I also want to show you this green capillary called the lacteal. We learned in the last couple of chapters that these green capillaries, or these green vessels, are part of the lymphatic system. And the lacteal is actually the place where fat absorption occurs. So when fatty material is coming in from the lumen and being transmitted or transported across this membrane, it actually moves into the lacteal. So fat goes into the lacteal, passes through the entire lymphatic system, and then gets dumped into the subclavian vein. So the fat actually doesn't get into circulation quite as quickly as things like amino acids and carbohydrates would that are able to go straight into the blood capillary system. So hopefully this is helping you understand how we have multiple layers of adaptations that are happening in our small intestine to allow for increased surface area that helps with increased rate of absorption of these nutrients.